Are the Toronto Maple Leafs seriously considering bringing back Ryan O'Reilly, the veteran center who left Toronto after just half a season, citing irreconcilable differences with the locker room and too many egos? Or is this just wishful thinking from fans who desperately want Craig Berube to reunite with his former Stanley Cup winning center and magically fix all of Toronto's playoff problems? All right, folks, let's pump the brakes on this rumor and inject some serious reality into the conversation. The idea of Ryan O'Reilly returning to the Toronto Maple Leafs is certainly intriguing from a nostalgia perspective, especially given his connection with current head coach Craig Berube. But before we get swept up in a romantic notion of a reunion and a secret plan to save the season, we need to examine the facts, the timeline, the current situation, and whether this move actually makes sense for either party. Let's start with the history. Ryan O'Reilly was acquired by the Toronto Maple Leafs at the trade deadline in 2023, coming over from the St. Louis Blues. The expectation was that he would provide veteran leadership, playoff experience, and two-way center depth for Toronto's postseason run. However, his time in Toronto was brief and ultimately unsuccessful. The Leafs were eliminated in the second round of the playoffs, and O'Reilly became an unrestricted free agent that summer. Now, here's where the narrative in this article becomes problematic. The report claims that O'Reilly's first stint in Toronto ended abruptly, with the players citing irreconcilable differences with the locker room functioning and too many egos. I need to be very clear. I cannot find any credible, verified sources where Ryan O'Reilly publicly made those specific statements about the Toronto locker room. While there was speculation about why he chose not to re-sign with the Leafs, and while it's true that he ultimately signed with the Nashville Predators as a free agent, attributing those specific quotes to O'Reilly without proper sourcing is misleading. What we do know is that O'Reilly signed a 4-year, $18 million contract with the Nashville Predators in the summer of 2023, choosing Nashville over a potential return to Toronto. The reasons for that decision could have been numerous. More money, a longer-term commitment, a different team culture, a preference for playing in Nashville, or simply a belief that the Predators offered a better opportunity to win. We shouldn't speculate or fabricate quotes to fit a narrative. Now, let's talk about the connection with Craig Berube, because that's the foundation of this entire rumor. It's absolutely true that Berube was O'Reilly's head coach in St. Louis during their Stanley Cup winning season in 2019. O'Reilly had his best offensive numbers under Berube's coaching, and he was a fundamental piece of that championship run, recording 23 points in 26 playoff games and winning the Conn Smythe Trophy as playoff MVP. He plays exactly the style of hockey that Berube demands: defensively responsible, physically robust, and relentless in board battles. That connection is real and it's meaningful. If there's any coach who could convince O'Reilly to return to Toronto, it would be Craig Berube. The analysis from Hockey Patrol states, Craig Berube's proximity to Ryan O'Reilly could be the key factor in helping the Maple Leafs overcome their playoff demons. O'Reilly already rejected Toronto last year because he felt the team didn't have the desire to win as a team. But people change, and when confronted with a chance to win another Stanley Cup working under his former coach, he may be willing to forgive. That's a reasonable speculation, but it's still just speculation. We don't have concrete evidence that O'Reilly rejected Toronto because he felt the team didn't have the desire to win. We're making assumptions about his motivations based on limited information. Elliotte Friedman, a highly respected NHL insider, had confirmed that O'Reilly will generate interest in the trade market and that the Maple Leafs approached him previously but were rejected. Now, with Berube in command, the situation could be different. That's a fair assessment, and it's based on credible reporting. Let's talk about the current situation with the Nashville Predators. Nashville has indeed had a disappointing start to the season, and they could be willing to move veterans like O'Reilly if they decide to retool or rebuild. O'Reilly is 33 years old now, with limited time remaining in his career, and he's likely looking for one more chance to win a Stanley Cup. If Nashville is out of playoff contention, moving O'Reilly to a contender would make sense for both the player and the organization. From Toronto's perspective, acquiring O'Reilly will provide veteran leadership, playoff experience, and two-way center depth. He would be the perfect second or third-line center to relieve pressure on Auston Matthews and John Tavares. He's a proven winner. He knows how to perform in high-pressure situations, and he brings a kind of championship mentality that Toronto desperately needs. However, there are significant obstacles. First, O'Reilly's contract carries a cap hit of $4.5 million per season through 2027. That's manageable, but Toronto would still need to create cap space to accommodate him. Second, O'Reilly would need to be willing to waive any trade protection in his contract and agree to return to Toronto. Given that he chose Nashville over Toronto just 2 years ago, there's no guarantee he would be interested in coming back. Third, the price in terms of trade assets could be significant, especially if multiple teams are interested in acquiring him. Here's my take, Leafs Nation. While the idea of Ryan O'Reilly returning to Toronto under Craig Berube's coaching is appealing, we need to be realistic about the likelihood and the actual impact. O'Reilly is a good player, a proven winner, and a valuable veteran presence. But he's also 33 years old, and his best years are likely behind him. He's not going to single-handedly transform the Leafs into Stanley Cup champions. The conclusion states, the acquisition of Ryan O'Reilly will be Brad Treliving's smartest move, proving that hiring Craig Berube was a first step in changing the culture. O'Reilly is the player who can finally teach this Maple Leafs roster how to win when it truly matters. That's a bold statement, and I'm not sure I agree. O'Reilly is a good player who could help, but calling it the smartest move and suggesting he can finally teach this roster how to win is putting an awful lot of pressure and expectation on a 33-year-old veteran. The Leafs' playoff struggles are systemic and multifaceted. They can't be solved by one player, no matter how experienced or accomplished. If the price is right, if O'Reilly is willing to return, and if Toronto can create the necessary cap space without sacrificing other important pieces, then sure, it's worth exploring. But this shouldn't be viewed as a magic bullet or a guaranteed solution. It's a potential upgrade, a veteran addition who could provide value, but it's not the franchise-defining move that some are making out to be. What do you think, Leafs Nation? Should Brad Treliving pursue a trade for Ryan O'Reilly and bring him back to Toronto under Craig Berube's coaching? Would O'Reilly's veteran leadership and championship experience be enough to finally push the Leafs over the top? Or should Toronto be focusing on younger, higher-impact players who can contribute for the long term? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear all your perspectives on this potential reunion. And if you want to stay on top of every trade rumor, every potential reunion, and every breaking news story as the NHL season unfolds, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe. We'll be here breaking down every significant development, and you won't want to miss a single update as we continue to chase that ultimate prize.